Virtual audience, followers of diverse marketing, kid at heart. If you found this content on LinkedIn or YouTube, we thank you in advance because today I have a super exciting guest. Our very first sneakerhead, some may even call him a fashionista, somebody that's bringing toy and fashion together. He is the CMO of one of the coolest retail chains called BAIT. Eric, say hello.
What's going on, brother?
Oh man, I'm so excited to have you, dude. I have one of my missions is to bring the toy and fashion industry a little bit closer to each other. I always felt like it's a miss because there's so much inspiration happening there. But if somebody's unfamiliar with BAIT, can you give us the quick elevator pitch on your unique take on fashion, toys, and retail?
BAIT is a lifestyle brand that fuses fashion, art, music, sports, pop culture, all of this together under one roof. We are a chain of brick and mortar stores. We have 10 stores in the US, 2 in Japan, and pretty prominent e-com presence, as well as doing trade shows and conventions.
I mean, you're selling sneakers, you're selling apparel, you're selling collectibles, you're doing crazy collabs. It's unlike any toy store that has ever existed, in my opinion.
No, man, this type of model hasn't been done yet. We thought it would make sense in this world. It's that consumer that chases after the limited edition shoes is into limited edition everything, and he's grown up with, he's very into pop culture and what's trending, what's relevant. So bringing all this together and completing his life is what we set out to do. We realize that he's not just into just one thing. He's very complex, and he's all about completing the full circle of hype, things that are limited edition, things that other people want. So that's what we cater to.
You keep using the word he or the pronoun. Is your consumer predominantly male, or are you seeing a shift with females in the hype culture?
Our consumer is predominantly male. When I say he, is because the typical male tends to blow his money on some random crap. And so, what I've noticed is that women are very set on their way. They may vary in a little bit, but their spending habits are very specific. And guys are a little more random. Like, you get them with bright lights and shiny objects, and at that moment you're like, oh, that's cool, I want it, And so when I say that, exactly. So like, our demo is about 70% male, but when it comes to buying into that whole lifestyle piece that we present, it's almost like 90-something% male who will who wants the cool shoes, wants the cool collectible, wants a random book, art piece, this and that. So that's why I kind of go towards saying he.
Yeah, look, man, when we last time we hung out, I think it was at ComplexCon, and we'll come back to that in a second. But one of the key insights that I think I remember reading from a trend report or a research report at a ComplexCon is that the hype apparel, this industry, this hype beast culture has made it okay for dudes to shop. Like, it's become okay for us to buy and stand in line and find these cool things.
It's all about it. These guys, the sneakerhead, I guess what I'd like to say is that sneakerhead has matured. He's evolved, right? He's no longer just chasing just the shoes. He's looking at other things. He's realizing that there's other categories out there that he can get his fix with. He doesn't have to wait for that hype shoe that drops every here and there. He could go chase after con exclusives, limited edition art pieces,
an IKEA piece that collaborated with
exactly
Virgil. Absolutely. Yeah.
Exactly. You know, it's changed so much. And so this consumer, you know, what we set out to do with Bait is we wanted to go after multiple consumers, multiple demos. And so like, you know, when we were use that metaphor of the piece of the pie, right? You know, in that sneaker world, that pie was limited. And so what we set out to do was chase after another piece of a pie of the collectibles side, you know, the art side. And, you know, instead of trying to grab all of one pie, we end up eating a whole flight of different pies. And that we're trying to educate the consumer into different things too. Like, as you see a lot of our collabs, you know, we cross over a cool shoe
Yeah.
that a sneakerhead would go after, and then we bridge it with a licensed property, right? And so now we're no longer just going after that sneakerhead that's in love with the shoe, but we've created something that a fan of that licensed property would go after too. So now we're tapping the two different demos, and
Right.
so
And it crosses
you'll see
back
that
over.
common trend across, exactly, that we do across a lot of our collabs.
Okay. Well, it's a good entry point into the next question. The toy industry isn't very connected to the fashion world, and especially hip hop culture. One, why do you think that's the case? And two, is there anything that you recommend that companies do different to be aware of the trends associated with this market?
Man, this one I'm going to be blunt with you, Steve. Like,
Please.
you know, like both of us, we venture off and we are very tied into the toy industry, and we've been in it for a long time. And then we've gone into the fashion side, and we've seen both sides. And really, in my opinion, is that the reason it hasn't crossed over is if you look at who's running the toy industry, that person isn't tapped into it, right? It's not their core. They don't understand that scene, you know, across all of the major toy companies. Like, if you look at who's running the show, it's not it's not the person. That person doesn't understand both worlds. And it's, you know, to understand both worlds, it's complex, man. It's like very few people can tap into both sides, and I just haven't seen it done, you know. So, you know, I've done the whole corporate world and everything like that, and you can't be cool. You can't create cool if you're not cool. That's why you see a lot of companies tap into influencers and collabs, because, you know, don't they try to stay in your lane, try to do what you do well. And that's why and you introduce the whole collab piece of how, for example, Supreme Oreo, right?
Mhm.
How did that cookie make itself cool? Is it tapped into one of the upper echelon of streetwear and hype, and it made itself cool. And that's what a lot of companies are doing now. Video game companies, toy companies, home goods, they're all playing into that. Is that they aren't trying to be cool on their own and trying to cross over on their own. They're collaborating and finding people to do it with, to almost in a weird way say, like, to get that street cred, you know?
Look, they need to be asking people if they like hip hop on their job interviews. Like, it's just
Yeah, exactly.
well, let's back up and talk a little bit about your formal toy industry experience. We met probably almost a decade ago when you were a brand manager at Spin Master. I remember you presenting the super dope Tron figures. I always thought those were way ahead of their time. But can you talk about that experience and how it helped you in this venture in your career and future ventures?
Man, my time at Spin taught me a lot. You know, like, look, going back to OG Spin back in the day, Spin was so nimble, so quick, right? Before Spin really got corporate, they were able to pull off cool projects fast, and on an impulse, and just like whatever Ben, Renan, you know, Anton wanted to do, like, let's just do it. You know, they took on passion projects,
Mhm.
just to do cool things. And me coming from other corporate, you know, from Disney and Bandai, and then going to Spin and experiencing that, I'm like, wow, you really could pull off creating something like that quickly. They're like, yeah, why not? And, you know, without all of the corporate red tape and everything and branding and legal and everything like that, they would just do it. And that taught me a lot. And then I took that with me as I got to Bait, which was a startup. We're growing, and it was all about like, let's just hit it, you know, and if it doesn't work out, we move on and we go do the next project, you know. And if it's a winner, you know, we keep on going with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Spin,
You know,
I
we
think,
weren't scared to take risks.
no, Spin always failed fast. You know, they
Yeah,
always, it
yeah,
was a mantra, like, take your shot, fail fast, don't keep throwing money at something that doesn't work, and keep it moving. I've learned a ton from them as well. I think we kind of come from that same cloth that they taught.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about, you know, the Happy Half Hours genesis is the lack of trade shows and the ability to connect. And, you know, we go to trade shows to find cool products, meet interesting people, and extract insights that we normally couldn't get in off an email or on some website. So this is where it started. And you guys were some of the best trade show exhibitors in my experience, to go into probably more trade shows than anybody else. Your strategy at Complex Con and Comic Con, for example, were incredible, and you always came through with the dopest collabs, period. Can you talk us through your exclusive strategy and how it tied into the way you market at trade shows?
Yeah, I mean, going back to like what we were talking about a little bit earlier, right? It was like how we tap into different demos, and it was a lot of like zigging and zagging. It's like when you say Complex Con, when you go to Complex Con, what do you expect to see? You're expecting to see more fashion and
Mhm.
music, you know? And that's where we said, you know what? Let's separate ourselves and let's go big. We could already do that we could bring the footwear, we could bring the fashion, but what can we bring that a lot of these other vendors couldn't play in? So like at Complex Con 1, we brought a lot of collectibles to that, you know, and now Complex Con is like a 3 or 4, and you know, you've been into all of them, you've seen
Mhm.
the evolution of the vendors and the collectible scene, right? But when you look back at one, we were one of the few vendors that brought collectibles into it, and now everyone's playing into that because they see the opportunity there. And then when you look at the shows like San Diego Comic Con, New York Comic Con, everyone is expecting you to come to the table with collectibles. That's where we started bringing fashion,
Yeah.
right? So it's just kind of changing things up and you know, doing what we do well, but as well as educating and introducing uh, this this demo to a different type of category and genre that they're not used to seeing.
Absolutely, man. I think you guys did a Street Fighter collab. I remember a J Baldwin collab. You guys had
Yeah,
the Bruce Lee collab. You had a Kobe. I mean, you've done some of the coolest things, and your brand. I mean, it has the street cred. Your store on Melrose, by the way, is incredible too. All your stores are.
thank you.
You know that. So last time we hung out, I scooped up the Stranger Things times Nike collab. I got the red Cortez with the what is it, the 1985 on the back.
Right. Yep.
Those were thick. Yours, the ones that you tore off, the ones that you burned off
Yeah,
to
yeah.
the upside down Nikes were insane. But I got the matching shirt, pants, and I ultimately what I want to know is, can you show us a recent collab that you are super excited about?
Yeah, I mean, so like going back to that Comic Con, last time we hung out, that was like the perfect storm of things, right? You at the time, Stranger Things was smoking hot. It was like one of the hottest properties at the time, and then you you tie in with the number one sneaker company, and then you do an activation at the Super Bowl of pop culture, the mecca of pop culture, San Diego Comic Con. You tie all those things together and you put it an activation at our store. That thing was just bananas, man. Doing the release, the in-store pop-up takeover, scavenger hunt in downtown San Diego during Comic Con, and seeing that many people participate, it was crazy. So that was like one of the highlights. But just recently, we did a collab with Disney Pixar, and we released 2 pairs of shoes for Toy Story. So I actually have a pair of it, but we
Yeah.
released a pair of Reebok Insta Pumps.
Woo!
This is the Buzz and Woody pair.
Oh yeah.
So that, yeah, there you go.
A sneaker
Buzz sign.
obsessed with that. There's obviously it's got toyetic DNA all over it. But if somebody's a fan
Right.
of Toy Story, and you might make them into a sneakerhead with that release.
Exactly. You know, so like there's sneakerheads that weren't that big of fans of Toy Story, but that's a cool shoe, and now they've just instantly, you know, found a connection with Toy Story, and we released the full capsule behind it too, apparel and other things behind it, and so now they actually might find themselves buying other things across other categories that they never thought about doing before. And then on the flip side, you have that Toy Story fan who probably never bought a pair of shoes over $100 before. Like that was unheard of. And then to see this and like, wow, that's really cool. And I'm a hardcore Toy Story fan. You know what? That's something I'll get. And so now that Toy Story fan just stepped over to the sneakerhead side.
Amazing, amazing. Well, I'm going to surprise you with one last question, but I really appreciate your insights and your take on the marketplace. You continue to surprise your consumers, and I'm curious, what's your outtake? What's your take on retail fall Q4 2020? What does it look like? What should people be prepared about? What are you thinking about?
Ooh, tough one. Only because the retail landscape is still up in the air, like actual brick and mortar, the in-store experience is still to be determined, but spending habits have not stopped. I mean, for example, this Toy Story shoe that we dropped originally, of course, ideally we would have loved to have released it in all our stores, but we moved it over to an online release, and you know, we sold out in, well, we did a raffle system, but within the first 20 minutes of the raffle, we had sold out already. You know, we had a total of 85,000 entries for this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know,
What was the
so
retail, Eric?
it was 180.
180 and 85,000 people wanted to buy it.
Yeah.
Incredible what hype culture really quantifies.
Right. Yeah. So that consumer hasn't stopped spending. You know, they're just spending it differently. You know, they're doing it online, and they're still chasing after that limited edition product or things that they could flip or resell. It's just done differently. You know, as soon as stimulus checks started hitting, our ecom went bananas.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that's what that money was meant to be for. But hey, we'll take the money.
Sure,
You know,
sure.
so Q4, I really see things coming back together. You know, you're out there in Dallas. Over here on the California side, there's counties that, like, drove around, and there's counties that, like, you would have never couldn't tell that there's things that, you know, there was a pandemic that recently hit, you know, but fully up and going, everyone's dining in, no masks. And then there's other counties that are a little more conservative, a little more cautious, and, you know, require masks, and it's different. So, but I think by Q4, I think things are going to be back pretty close from a consumer standpoint. You know, there's things that are the way we live, do our things is going to be completely changed for a while. But when it comes to spending and shopping, I think it's going to be pretty close back to what it was, man.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of agreeing. I'm in agreement with you. I genuinely hope that we can come back to a life that's a little bit easier to live, but we will overcome. Eric, you're amazing, man. I just want to remind everybody, the website is baitme.com. You can find the entire lineup online there. If you're in San Diego, LA, Portland, San Francisco, Seattle, or Tokyo, make sure you visit one of the Bait stores near you. They're amazing, and they're always surprise you with something new and interesting. And Eric, you've made it to the final segment of the Happy Half Hour. We like to call it the creation of positive energy. It's an opportunity to shout out anyone doing a great job, other brands in the business that you admire, or anything else that you'd like to plug and to shout out. Eric, the floor is yours. You are the man. Cheers to you.
Uniqlo, clothing brand, absolutely crushing it. I I love the way they do things, the programs that they put together. You know, so I'm definitely a fan of how I sit back and I watch what they do, and I'm like, damn, that's really cool. You know, who else is just killing it out there? Um, Shout outs to Nike for doing a major bounce back and trying to stay strong and go, you know, doing what they do well through this whole situation and making sure that us as vendors, we're taken care of, because, you know, with the riots and the protests, we had a store, our Portland store was hit pretty heavy. We got hit 3 nights in a row from looting, and, you know, Nike was there with us and, you know, is trying to help us get that store back together. So major shout outs to those guys. Love them.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Amazing. Well, Eric, thank you so much. Shout out Nike. That's really inspirational. This is the time where we wave to everybody. Say bye.
Always a pleasure, Steve.
Baitmeat.com. Check it out ASAP. Thanks, man.